Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. My name's Hannah Mollison and I am the Sales Director here at Workwell Outsourcing. And I'm really pleased to be presenting this podcast today where I'm joined by Sam Holt from CapEx. Sam, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us, Hannah.
No worries at all. So first of all, Sam, do you want to give us a bit of an overview of yourself and also of CapEx, please?
Yeah, of course. So my name's Sam Holt, working for Capex Currency. We're a specialist currency broker that work really closely with recruiters who are placing abroad and sending and receiving foreign currency, assisting with their international bank accounts and foreign payments.
Brilliant, thanks, Sam. So today we're going to be discussing US sectors that are going to thrive. So with Trump coming back into power in January this year, there's been lots of talk around the changes that he wants to implement and the changes that he implemented as soon as he came back into power. And we want to discuss how this is going to affect the recruitment industry and what sectors we think will thrive under Trump's second term. This webinar is part of our educational series from the Workwell Outsourcing Academy, specifically for recruitment agencies to support their growth, provide value, and also industry insights. All of our webinars and podcasts are available on our YouTube and Spotify. So if you'd like to catch up on any previous episodes, you can find them all there. And just to give you a bit of an overview of the Workwell Group, so we're the UK's biggest service provider for recruitment agencies, from funding, tech, outsourcing to international EOR and UK umbrella. Our goal is to essentially enable recruitment agencies to focus on their core business of recruitment while we handle the key operational functions. So shall we dive right in, Sam? And first of all, it'd be good to know from your perspective what feedback you've had or observations you've made over the last few months from agencies or customers that are working in the US.
Yeah, of course. So I think, towards the end of last year, so end of 2024, we had the US elections, which I think caused a lot of uncertainty in the markets, especially in the last sort of quarter of the year. Obviously, then once Trump was elected, we saw the economy, there was a lot of signs of hope boosting the economy. Trump was really sort of, pitching to try and boost business and be very business friendly with his sort of tax and tariffs, so good for the US. So yeah, it was a really, really positive end to the year in the US, and I think a lot of people that maybe will work in the US market and thought it was a bit of a quieter year last year are starting to now see signs of recovery in the US markets at the beginning of 2025.
Okay, so do you think that the recovery that we saw at the back end of 2024 has kind of continued into 2025 to date?
Yeah, so I think obviously there's still, I think while Trump, given sort of nature of his character, there's always going to be slight uncertainty compared to a lot of other presidents. It has been quite a tumultuous start to the year, especially with regards to his tariffs. But the recruiters I'm speaking to at the moment are doing well in the US. There's definitely sectors that we're going to look at that should be doing better now Trump's in power than they were previously. So we'll tap into those. But in terms of the US economy, we use models from the Bloomberg terminal. So these are sort of data and analytics and predictions from the top 60 banks in the world. And the general consensus is that the US economy should grow by about 2.3% in 2025. That means GDP will rise from 29 trillion to just over 30 trillion this year, hopefully.
Oh wow, okay, so a fair increase then that we should see over the next 12 months or so.
Yeah, it's steady growth, and another important factor as well, I think, is the unemployment rate. That's expected to stay around the same level at 4 to 4.2%. But jobs numbers in the US, which will interest recruiters, are predicted to grow by 150,000 a month. So that's the NFP projections. So jobs outside the farming sector are expected to grow by about 150,000 every month in the US. So there's obviously signs of optimism there.
And where's NFP? Where's that? What's that?
Non-farm payrolls. So it's basically the statistics that show the new jobs that have been created in this previous month outside of the farming sector.
Okay.
and that's expected to grow by approximately 150,000 every month for the next, towards the next 12 months, basically, end of 2025. So that's a good sign, because when that number's lower, it means that the economy is struggling and there might be sort of less jobs created. So when that number's positive and it's a good, strong number, that's obviously great for recruiters, because it means there's hopefully more roles for them to place into as well.
Yeah, and are there any particular states that you think will do better than others?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of optimism to my recruiters. A lot of them like to go to Texas. I know there's a lot of around there at the
Texas
moment.
at the moment, Austin.
I don't know. Sorry.
That Austin and Texas is just huge at the moment. It just seems to be blowing up.
Yeah, and I think it's quite a good place. If they're setting up the business as well. I think there's like maybe some tax implications that are better than other
Yeah,
states. But yeah, a lot of my recruiters seem to be concentrating there at the moment, which might be a sort of away from your sort of traditional like viewpoints of like New York and LA, etc.
yeah, yeah. Um, so shall we look at what sectors then you think will be most successful?
Yeah, of course. So in terms of the sectors, these are the sectors that a lot of analysts are predicting will start to thrive a little bit more now Trump's in power, given his given policies. Um, the first one that we'll be looking at is healthcare and social assistance. Healthcare stocks have outperformed every other sector in the S&P 500 at the year to date. They've currently gone up by 7.3%. I know from talking to clients that are working that sector in the US, it's been a really good start to the year for them as well. So that's definitely one to target if you're working the US markets. Secondly, renewable energy and sustainability. This might surprise some people, because Trump has previously said how he wants to sort of go back to oil and mining coal and
Yeah,
a lot of traditional.
gas
Um,
production, all that kind of thing. Yeah,
Yeah, but the renewable energy and sustainability market is still going strong, still predicted to grow. The push for cleaner energy solutions has led to growth in these sectors, especially keen to look at wind and solar power. So they're markets that seem to be doing well in the US going into 2025. Thirdly, cybersecurity. I think this is a sector that over the last few years we've just seen keep growing and growing. We have a statistic that in 2023, US companies lost $12.5 billion to cyber criminals. Um,
wow.
the demand for cybersecurity firms and their staff is always on the rise, and I think that threat is, with the rise of AI and people trying to sort of like copy your voice and things like that, it's only going to get higher and higher. So really good industry.
And is that
Um,
things like when they say that there's been X amount of fraud? Is that like computer hackers?
yeah, so I mean that's a large chunk of it. Obviously, like people, it's basically all sort of cyber fraud. So it can be people like hacking in from computers, people, in terms of like doing that on your banking, or whether they're going into your sort of like Amazon accounts and ordering off there, or going onto your website and putting in, false orders, or, trying to refund money onto their accounts. So
Yeah,
obviously companies as well as customers are keen to get that reduced. So yeah, really grow an industry that's really growing well in the US, cybersecurity.
yeah,
Sort of linked to that, really, I suppose, which a lot of people would have seen in 2024, given like the news of like Nvidia stocks that just seem to absolutely, rocket on the stock market. We
yeah,
have artificial intelligence and machine learning.
yeah,
So that's all your AI and machine learning technologies. They're being integrated across various industries now, enhancing efficiency and innovation. The
yeah.
US AI market is projected to reach 66 billion by 2025.
Yeah,
Um,
and I know there's major investment from the government and also private firms into AI automation, and actually also cybersecurity on that note as well. So yeah, that will probably continue to expand.
Yeah, I think when we talk to our recruiting clients, a lot of them are working that market, or trying to get into it. Obviously, given the sort of higher wages associated in that industry as well, so the higher commissions. Um, really good industry. And linked to that, finally, another US sector that to target is the semiconductor manufacturing. So obviously all these artificial intelligence companies and machine learning companies are demanding the manufacturing of the semiconductors which are needed in the computers.
Sorry, say that again.
Semiconductor manufacturing.
Okay,
So
and what's that then?
these are basically like the chips that are like sort of processing. I'm not an IT guy, but the chips that are needed for the AI to work. So they're doing the processing in the computers, etc. So this is basically, I believe, what Nvidia are actually manufacturing, which is why their stock went up so much last year. So anything, whether it's like a car or a computer, which is using AI, they're demanding these chips, and basically they can't be made quick enough at the moment. So anyone in that industry, there's a high demand for the jobs. It's an industry worth over 200 billion.
So will that be things like software engineers, data scientists, AI specialists, IT roles, that kind of, is that the type of roles that they'd be looking at for that?
They're all linked with the artificial intelligence and machine learning markets, and then the semiconductor manufacturing is the actual manufacturing of the computer chips, basically. So like the manufacturing companies. I know Trump's keen to start bringing the manufacturing of these computer parts back to the US and away from China. We saw it in the lead up to his to the elections, and now he's in power. He's still, very convinced that he wants to try and get manufacturing back into the US from foreign countries, especially China, and that can be seen essentially with the tariffs that he's trying to implement at the moment.
Yeah, so with the tariffs that he's kind of in the process of implementing. Some have already been implemented. Have you heard much noise or heard anything from the businesses that you work with in the US on how it's affected them, if it's been a good thing or a bad thing?
Yeah, I mean, because they're working the US markets, obviously a lot of them are based in the UK, but I think the UK's been hit. It looks at the moment as if we're not going to be as affected as like the EU, other countries in Europe. It seems that Trump's main targets, so to speak, are Canada, China, and Mexico. At the moment, it seems like the UK won't be as affected as much, but to be honest with you, anyone that watches the news every day and tries to keep on top of it will know that Trump can change his mind sort of at the flip of a hat very quickly. So so at the moment, a lot of the recruiting clients I've spoke to aren't too worried. Obviously, they're keeping an eye on it in case he does start putting tariffs on, especially like UK service providers, which recruiters will fall under. But at the moment, they've not been too affected. And if the tariffs mean that they're going to be creating more jobs in the US, then hopefully that'll mean the US market will have more jobs there, and they can recruit into them.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Sam. And
respect for UK recruiters in the US as well. So
say that again.
So just following on from that, there's a good level of respect for UK recruiters. They all seem to do really well in the US market. I think that the US recruiters don't, maybe not quite as experienced or as well respected as a lot of companies in the UK that have a lot of respect in the US. So
yeah, that's interesting because obviously, depending on how a recruitment business wants to work in the US, whether they do it on the ground in the US or they do it from the UK, which I think from my experience, and I don't know if it's yours as well, a lot of them tend to start from the UK before they get feet on the ground in the US. And obviously, these businesses are calling potentially from like a UK number, they have a different accent, and it must be hard for agencies to build a rapport with these potential new customers on the basis that they are, across the pond, potentially in a different time zone, and trying to build a relationship and get buy-in must be quite difficult. But if that is interesting that that they are respected from the US side of things as well.
Yeah, I think the industry is just a lot newer in the US. So I think where I used to work in recruitment myself before I went into FX 5 years ago. I went sort of like calling around to win new business. A lot of people have sort of heard it before from other recruitment companies. It's maybe a little bit tougher on the phones to win new business, but in the US, I think a lot of US businesses are more open to hearing about the service and what can be offered by recruitment companies, even if they are based in the UK, because the level of experience of UK recruitment companies can still be taken to the US and really taken advantage of.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that we find also, so we for agencies that we fund in the US. So for those listening that don't know, within Workwell Outsourcing, we fund businesses, UK businesses looking to branch out into the US, meaning that they can try new sectors, obviously try placing in that part of the world. But one thing that we have found, so we have US centric contracts for our agencies to use with their US customers, and using these US centric contracts that we got written by a US lawyer, our customers find it far easier to obtain payment from their US clients using the US contracts than UK contracts. And trying to obtain payment from a US company on a UK client is really difficult and also really expensive. So that's something that we have seen. So they might be interested in having the conversation at the start, but it's also so important for these businesses to be able to back themselves up with their paperwork and the contracts, and also just things like the language in the contract is more US centric, and culturally US customers are more comfortable with using the US contracts, and it looks just that bit more professional. And also it's just the cost saving on that as well.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Obviously, it's not my speciality, but I've got a lot of experience working with companies that move to the US, and I think getting that back office, the contracts, the sort of currency accounts that we can offer as well, all in place from when you start, is going to give you a much better footing when you go to that market for sure.
And so, how does it work with your currency accounts then? What does that process kind of look like?
Yeah, so we offer multi-currency accounts. They're held in our, in our clients' businesses' names. So, say for instance, ABC Recruitment, and that just allows them to send and receive, up to 140 different currencies if needed. We can also offer, especially for the people that are based in the US or work in the US, sorry, we can offer a US-based dollar account. So if they want to start receiving dollars, and they don't want to set up an entity in the US, they can basically have a dollar account held in New York with Citibank, receive all of their funds into it, and get a better exchange rate at the same time. So like you were saying, you want to have your contracts, your back office set up. That helps win the business, and then when it comes to getting paid, it makes it a lot easier if it's just local settlement for our clients.
Yeah, I guess again, it's kind of like first impressions. So having that bank account, having those contracts, ensuring you've got all of your ducks in order, ready to press the button when their client is ready to go.
Yeah, and it's just in terms of if I was a US business and I was going to use a UK company, I think a lot of the US businesses might not even realise that some of these recruiters are actually in the UK, to be honest, because they're paying into US bank accounts. You guys are providing all the back office solutions and contracts, so it really doesn't. There's no sort of extra effort or any sort of extra friction there for the.
I think. Yeah, and I think even to the point where you were saying the other day where that people, recruiters based in the UK are using US phone numbers when they are calling and reaching out to these companies. It actually looks like they are based in the US sometimes if they utilize that.
Yeah, I've definitely got clients that are doing that. I'm not sure of the specific software, but if anyone wants to reach out, I can tap into my contacts, and I'm sure you can as well. But if you're ringing off US numbers from the UK, you've got a bank account based in the US, got Workwell helping you with all of the documentation and contracts, etc., and the funding. There's really no reason why a US company will say, "Oh, we don't want to use you because you're based in the UK." A lot of the time, it will make no difference to them now.
Yeah, it's a really exciting time for the recruitment industry, and them being able to branch out into the US and have so much support from various different companies in the UK that have used experts in the US to ensure that everything is aligned and in place for them. I think it's a great opportunity for anyone that's thinking about it to actually bite the bullet and do it, because from various different companies in the UK now, the support is there to support them through that process.
Yeah, I think they've got the sort of knowledge and confidence that the support's there, and I know from personal experience working with my clients, I'm sure you do as well, that it's a market that if you set it up right, doesn't actually cost that much to get, to try and tap into an economy which is so much bigger than the UK economy. It's been thriving for the last couple of years, and it looks to be continuing to grow under Trump in 2025 and the years moving forwards. So I think, if you get it right, there's a lot of success stories with our clients, and I'm sure it's the same for you guys as well.
Yeah, and also the margins in the US are just that much higher than the UK or Europe, which is another really appealing factor for companies wanting to branch out into the US.
Yeah, I've had exactly the same feedback, and we see some of the fees that are landing for our clients from the US, and I think it's fair to say, from my experience in recruitment, I never saw six-figure fees come in so regularly from the UK as they do through the US. So.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Thanks, Sam. Is there any other things that you think are worth us discussing, or anything else regarding any of the sectors that we discussed, or key takeaways?
If anyone wants to reach out and discuss it in more detail, I'm more than happy to help them. I think it's also just really important to, like it is, to speak to a specialist at Workwell. If you're going to work these markets, speak to an FX specialist, because essentially, if you are going to start sending and receiving foreign currencies, you want to make sure you're sort of mitigating the risk or hedging the risk a little bit. Understanding exactly what sterling you'll be getting back if you're receiving dollars. And we've got the experience working with companies, so, even if it's not just about the FX, if it's other sort of stories that we've heard as well, we're more than happy to pass on our knowledge. The industries we've gone over, the economic outlook we've gone over, and it looks really good for the US, especially if you look at compared to like Europe, that's looking to slow down a little bit in this year. So yeah. Good market, and I think people should definitely sort of look to explore it if they're not already.
Yeah. I was going to say Europe. We could do a whole nother podcast on Europe, I'm sure, and discuss that. And I think from a Workwell perspective, obviously, like I say, we can fund US contracts. So if anyone would like any information on how that works, we have two different funding models that we can use when funding the US. And I'd be happy to have conversations with anyone that would like any further information on that. Please do reach out to me via LinkedIn. Sam, thanks so much for your time today, and also going into detail of the sectors and the economy and your experience of working with US-centric agencies. I think it's been really helpful, and hopefully we've added some value to the people that are listening today. And yeah, maybe we should record another one at some point where we look at Europe and any other subjects that we think would be relevant.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure coming on and speaking to you today, Hannah. Really happy to start working with you guys and helping anyone that requires any assistance. I think, Europe would be a good one to look into next, and maybe the emerging markets as well.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. I will be back probably in the next couple of weeks with my next podcast from the Workwell Outsourcing Academy. If there are any subjects that you would like us to cover, or anything that you think would add value, please do get in touch with me via LinkedIn, because we're always open to discussing new topics and things that would be relevant to the recruitment industry. But thanks again for listening, everybody, and speak to you next time.